Alright, hey Brunhaver or the grader, whoever's watching this video. Obviously I don't have a code. I'm not proficient in Verilog, but I do understand some of the concepts of what we were trying to do with the code, so I figured I might as well try to explain those to get maybe a few points. I understand that in the memories that we're making, one row of pixels on the screen isn't going to fit in one row in memory. So you'll have the first 32 cells or bits, whatever you want to call it, of the screen as the first row of memory, and each one of those cells will be like one bit in the memory. But then you have another row like on the other side of that will be stored on the next line in memory. So like the first 32 cells will be one row in memory, and then the next 32 cells are next to it on the screen but are in the next row of the memory, and so forth. So you actually go through a couple rows in memory before you get through one row on the screen. I understand that. I keep looking at my screen for notes. I understand that we have to switch between memories. Like, we're going to read from one to see what's alive and what's dead and what we need to make alive and dead in the next round. But since we're reading from one, we can't write to it at the same time. So as we read from one, we copy that over and write the neighbors as high or low in the second memory and go back and forth. So as I read from this one, I write to this one, and then the next cycle, I'm going to read from this one and write to that one as who's alive and who's dead. I understand that there is some function of the address that will reference the range of pixels that we're referring to as alive or dead, because we're not talking about one pixel at a time. I know that we're going to parse out the cells that are used in the making of the address by having the last like 3 or 5 digits, depending on how wide you want the cells to be. But the last 3 or 5 digits of pix X or pix Y high is what cell X or cell Y would equal, and I would use those cell X and cell Y's in the functions and not really refer to pix X and pix Y once we create those cell X and cell Y's. And of course I want to use the valid pixel, pix V variable in the creating of cell X and cell Y, because we only care about valid pixels that are on the screen. We don't want to talk about the front porch or the back porch and the extra top and bottom as we're moving that electron ray, because I know it has something to do with the timing of once we shoot these electrons all the way over, you have a little bit of porch this way and that way, so that way the time you have enough time to get the shooter back over to the other side of the screen. So I've covered all that, and then that's my dog, sorry about that. And then I also, Gunner, I'm trying to make a video right now. Memory is 1D, but we're storing a 2D array of a screen into the memory. So I understand that if we're talking about one pixel, hey bub, that when we're checking to see if the neighbors are alive or dead, we're going to go one, plus one in memory. Well, in that line, because you have a 32-bit line that's talking about 32 pixel or cells. So if I'm talking about cell 64 on the screen somewhere, I'm going to look at cell 63, which is right next to it in the same bit string in memory, and I'm going to look at cell 65, which is the one right after it in the same line in memory. And then I'm not just going to go one row up, because that refers to like the next section that's still in the same row. Even though I'm going up in a row in memory, I'm not going up in a row that's on the screen. So depending on how many rows you had to parse out in memory to actually get one row on the screen, so say it's 4, I'm going to have to go back 1. So I'm here, and I have to go back 1, 2, 3, and then 4. And then I'm on the row directly above the pixel 64 that I'm talking about. So I'm going to look at the row above in that same spot, and then I'm going to look at +1 and -1, and then the same thing, I'm going to have to go up 4 in memory. So if I'm here, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm directly below it, and I'm going to look at the one below it, plus and -1, and that's how I would check my neighbors. I know that this isn't going to get me very much, if anything at all, but I figured it'd be worth trying to make a video explaining that I understand a lot of the concepts. A lot of the class discussion of what we were building and how to build it came from conversations that I had with Brunhaver outside of class. Just like I knew where we might run into trouble at and how to get around that, but as for me being able to write it, I was not capable of doing so. So that's the least bit of explanation that I have to try to get anything at all. And if I still get a 0, that's fine. At least I turned in something. Thanks for watching if you even took the time.